So our discussion today is based on the shell. Shell is a very important part of your Linux experience. So it is available for both Debian and Red Hat based distributions. It essentially allows you to do nearly everything you can with the GUI, and in many cases GUI may not be present. So we'll take a look at the bash, and or sometimes it's known as the terminal. Okay, so let's log into my system first. I had it open, so I had to close it. Okay, so where is shell located? The terminal. Like, how do you open it? So there are many ways you can open it, right? I added a shortcut here, terminal. If you didn't know, you can just start typing in here. Either way, you can get to it, terminal. So it looks very plain, right? Just a window with a blinking cursor, and that's pretty much it. So this is similar to DOS command prompt, as many of you have seen, or PowerShell, right, on Windows and Mac terminal. Just a plain window and with some cursor blinking, right? So there's a couple of things I can look at, right? So this is my username, and I'm logged into the system, and I didn't change the name. It's the local host, right? So I'm logged in to the system, and this sign, the $sign, indicates that I am logged in as a normal user. I am not privileged, which is fine, right? For the most part, I don't need to be an admin. So in the Linux world, it's known as the root user. I don't need to be root at all the time. Even without being root, I can explore and look at quite a few things. Also, from a security perspective, it's better to remain as a normal user rather than using admin privileges at all the time. So we'll take a look at that. So who am I? Starting with the first command. The username is apparent from here, but if you wanted to know, you can run that command, who am I. So we'll start with the looking at a couple of simple commands. So the first was who am I, right? So in Linux, you can run a wide variety of commands, and we'll just look at a few of those. You can look at your directory, right? What content? Look at the contents. You can change the directory, for example. So I'm going to go to downloads. So in Linux, right, it is very case sensitive, so you could not do something like cd downloads, right? So look at the letter D, right? It complains it can't find it. So in Windows, it'll be fine, right? Windows doesn't care about the cases in file names, but in Linux, it is very, very different. So even though it's the same word, same syntax, right? But the letter was different, so it did not work. So now, notice something. Initially, when I logged in, right, I was just at my home directory. Now that I'm in downloads folder, right, that has changed. So I'm this user at this machine, and I'm currently at downloads folder. Now, if you wanted to look at the full path, I can run pwd command, right? So that'll show you the absolute path of the directory that you're in. Now, if you wanted to go back, that's very simple. You can do change directory with 2 dots. That will take you back to your previous previous folder, right? So if you rerun the same command, pwd, right? So notice the difference, right? So I'm back to my user folder, right? Okay. So let's run some more commands. Let's say I want to look at the network information, right, on my system, or I want to know the CPU information, right? So let's run that command, lshw. So right here, I can see a number of information about my CPU, right? how about the network information? So when it comes to network information, it depends on what you're looking for. If you simply wanted to know IP address, you can run the simple command IPA. Obviously, this VM has multiple NIC cards, but this is the number you need to look for, right? That'll tell you the IP address. So if this looks messy, right, you can use grep. And I only care about inet, right? So as you can see, right, the difference between using grep and this command is this is a lot cleaner, but you'd have to know the syntax and know exactly what you're looking for, right? So grep is a very useful utility. It searches for specific terms. So it'll take the first part of your command and then you pipe it into grep, and then grep will look for that specific term, right? So in this case, you can see only the IP addresses for each of those NIC cards, right? Sometimes you want verbose output just like the first time. So it really depends, right? But this is how you can pipe other commands, and grep is really, really useful because a lot of the times Linux commands, Linux outputs are very detailed, so it could be overwhelming. So grep comes really handy for that. There's another command that also provides really valuable network information, which is lshw C network. Right. So over here, this looks a lot cleaner yet detailed, right? You can see a wide variety of information about your network card, their serial number, IP addresses, and whatnot, right? So this is very useful command if you needed to know network information. Let's look at if you wanted to know the date. What's the current date? How about the calendar? I think it's cal. There we go. I wanted to list what I have here. So many of these commands have additional parameters, right? So I just used the default, right? I can also do something like that, right? Now, if I wanted to know what other switches are available or other parameters, I can do man ls. So that brings me to a very detailed manual pages, Linux man pages. So I would highly recommend looking at the man pages because it is very detailed, and this is the best source for additional documentation. So the syntax is man and then the command itself. So you can do man yum, right? And then press Q to get back. So the syntax is man space and then your command, and it will show you all the options that are available for that command. It's really useful. Start to use man space and then the command. Let's say you wanted to know the host name. So mine is pretty dull. I didn't change it. So mine is called just a local host, a local domain. It is the default if you don't explicitly change it. What if you wanted to know what the version of Linux you're running, right? So in that case, you can do uname -a, right? So Linux is running on this machine, versions, time, the platform, right? So I am actually at the root of my system. I changed a directory to the root. So this is equivalent of C drive in Windows, right? Under C drive, so everything resides under C drive in Windows. In Linux, there is no drive letter. So this is the root partition. So instead of letters, we have partitions. And within this partition, there are some system folders, right? So typically the user's home directories are here, right? All the other ones are system managed. We've got a temp, which stores temporary files generated by other programs, and they're often discarded. So do not save anything there, right? And you can see other folders. So obviously, each of them have other content within them, right? So this typically contains other essential commands. The etc typically contains configuration files for the system. This contains essential system binaries. Var contains other variable data files. So these are very, very important directories. How about some tricks, right? So far I ran few commands, right? If you wanted to rerun some of those, right? What can you do? So there's a cool feature or command. It's called literally just history, right? So that shows you all the commands that you ran so far. Now, on the left-hand side, you notice a number, right? So if you wanted to rerun any of those, so you can simply type in this. So let's say I'll type in number 29, right? So that'll essentially run pwd command. I think I forgot the space there. Sorry. $32. So it's exclamation mark and then your number. So that reruns the command. Okay, so if I rerun the history, so notice that it added a history command there. Before I had 47 commands, right? So now I'm up to 51. So that's really useful. Sometimes when you run commands, they will run, but if you wanted to terminate that, you can press Control-C to interrupt it. So let's go into bin to what's in there. I actually ran, so I went into bin, right? I changed directory to bin, and then I did ls. I changed the directory to bin, and now I wanted to see what was in there. So bin contains a lot of majority of the programs that we've been using. For example, cd, cat, awk, ls, kill, tar, su, pwd. All those commands are located in this directory. So let's talk about help. How do you get help? You can do help ls. So the thing about help is that it's not available for all programs, right? Unlike man pages, you can do man netstat, right? So help may or may not be present for all the programs. Now let's install something, right? Yum install, let's say audacity. So that is a software that does audio editing. It's a very simple program. So a couple of things here. First of all, I am not a privileged user, so I will not be able to install, right? So let's elevate ourselves. Okay, so if you notice now, right, the dollar sign changed to a hash, so that indicates I am privileged user now, right? So let's rerun it, right? Yum install audacity. Okay, so it complains that it cannot find this software, which is understandable because this is a plain vanilla installation of CentOS, and by default it doesn't have software repository information. It has a limited number of software. So what we need to do is enable something called epel repository. So let's do that. The syntax remains the same, right? Yum space install and then you package. So what we're doing now is installing the repository. So this is a special repository. It contains additional software. So if we rerun it now, hopefully Audacity will be there. There we go. So after we enabled epel repository, it has the Audacity package in there, so we are able to install it. It went and looked for it. Right now it's looking for a confirmation. So I'm gonna go ahead and do yes. Okay. Confirmation. There you go, it's complete. So if you try to install another software and it complains it cannot find it, it's typically that means it's not available in your repository, right? So you need to enable epel. Now the epel, you don't have to do this every single time, right? Now it's enabled once, and now if you look for other software, that will be installed as well. I can go ahead and install another small package, htop. Yeah, htop is another cool utility I really like. So it's not available, right? If it was, I'd be able to go into it. So let's do that. Install htop. It's a really handy utility that's terminal based, right? So it's similar to Task Manager, and I quite like it. If you open it, htop, that shows you the task manager within the terminal, right? So you can see CPU and memory consumption, what processes are running, and then once you're done, you can press the Q to get back to the terminal. Okay. So I want to talk about one thing here. As you noticed, I remained within as a privileged user with the right. So this is not really best practices, right? Best practices is if I wanted to install another software, right? This is the best practice. So yum install. Let's say, what else can I install? Pigeon.